The War for the Tower. It's good. warforthetower.com.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 7, Episode 13, so they say. The Name of the Doctor. In this episode, the gentlemen are here, and they are still creepy, even though it's been years since we saw them in Buffy. I don't know the purpose that they serve, but that's okay. They're effective. This episode overall? I don't know about this, though. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Tasha.
I'm Jamie.
All right, Jamie. Tell me your feelings on this episode. You know I always want to know.
When this first aired, I found it to be very convoluted.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I also felt like it was a weird... not a fix for a problem... But it just kind of felt like there were no hints of this in any way. I don't know. I don't know how I felt about it. I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm. It's so here's my problem. One, I agree on the convoluted nature of it. I also don't love that Clara's the whole thing, it's even part of her monologue is, I was born to save the Doctor.
Yeah.
I really feel like Clara is the personification of the worst parts of the Mystery Girl situation that we've complained about. And having that be in her monologue is such a concise way of putting it. She doesn't exist as her own person in any way, not even within the universe of the show. It's not just us reading into it. It's in the script. And it really frustrates me that this is like the purpose that she serves here is to simply sacrifice herself. And I don't like it, and it's not satisfying. And I feel like I feel like kind of weirdly insulted by it, because I was trying so much to give the season the benefit of the doubt when she turned up and this whole thing was going on. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that exactly what I was worried about was precisely what was happening, even worse than what I had predicted in some ways, because it wasn't just that they were trying to do something more effective and they failed. They weren't even trying to do something more. That was all she was here for, was literally to serve a purpose for the Doctor as a savior for him. And
she's a living MacGuffin.
Yeah, it's such a bummer.
Last time, and I know it's been like 2+ weeks since we last recorded, and so it's been a little bit since we watched the last episode, which was that Cybermen episode.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Clever, written by Neil Gaiman. So Kat Slater sent me a link to an interview that Neil Gaiman did for, what was this for? Radio Times. It was right after that episode aired. This is not going to make you feel any better.
Oh, dear.
But he said the original companion was going to be very much the Victorian governess we saw at Christmas. Doctor Who has its own peculiar way of being written, so I started writing it about 14 months ago. I wrote about the first 10 pages, and then they said they'd change the companion from what I was expecting to something else. When we decided or we decided they can do more weird stuff if it's now the contemporary third incarnation, so I had to reshape it so it wasn't the governess. He said his original brief for the Doctor's new companion consisted simply of a mock script written by showrunner Stephen Moffat, which Jenna Louise Coleman and other less fortunate actresses who missed out on the part were asked to read when going for the role. What I got was the scene that Stephen Moffat wrote as the Clara character audition piece. He sent me that and said, "This is what she sounds like. But from that, you just make her up as you go along."
That sounds like a disaster.
That is like the worst way to run a show, in my opinion. And I'm not a showrunner, but I pay attention to how television works. There are certain showrunners that I have listened to on podcasts, who I've read their interviews, who I follow on social media, and I read their tweets and I know what kind of planning they put into their seasons. And something like this, where you've planned out who's going to write each episode, and you give them a brief, and here's our new companion, and she's a Victorian governess, and then months later you're like, actually, we completely reworked that, so here's the audition sides, which often have nothing to do with who the character is, and go ahead and make it up as you go along. That encapsulates every problem I have with Clara. She is nothing. She has no personality of her own. She is not a fully realized character. She's not a fully realized person. Because they mishmashed her, and then it's like they retconned. We have to come up with why she's impossible. Oh, she jumps into his time stream, and then she's there through all the different incarnations of the Doctor to save his life.
Except she's not, because we only ever saw her starting from this past season, so you can't even quite retcon that adequately.
I guess they tried that by saying, often he didn't even hear me.
Right. Like, which is just such a cheap, come on. Oh, that is so disappointing.
When I got this message from Kat, she posted it on the Whovian group, and I read the article, and then my response was, well, that explains a lot. God, I hate Moffat. That it might be the most Moffat-y arrogance that has ever happened on any of his shows. Of just like, it's fine. We'll just make it all up as we go along. There's no plan here. Like, at least with the mystery of what was going on with Amy, I felt like there was a plan in place.
You know what kills me too is that despite the fact that she saves him, I've mentioned how irritated I was by like the cover art for this season being the Doctor carrying a unconscious Amy on Amazon. And she saves him, but there comes a point where he like scoops her up, and it's the same sort of imagery.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with this show. Like, so far, it just feels like the Doctor is... they need him to be the cool hero guy, no matter what's actually happening and whether that actually makes sense. And it's not accurate a lot of the time, and yet they make it accurate by forcing these moments. And I think they were trying to get around the like low-key misogyny of having there be a companion that doesn't have any of her own agency, it doesn't feel like, throughout, by, oh, well, she's saving him, though.
Yeah.
So it's different. No, it's not. That just renders her a non-person.
Yeah, this is one of those like classic Stephen Moffat moments of his weird misogyny, where it's exactly what you're saying is one of the big problems I had with him. Like, because he doesn't know how to write women unless they're a mystery, and then they need saving. It's why I hate that image of the Doctor carrying Amy, because by that point, Amy had more than proven that she was not a damsel. And it was that image was insulting to me when that episode aired.
Yeah.
And now here we have Clara, who is very charming, and I really liked her when she was the souffle girl, and I really liked her when she was the governess. It really does seem like those two versions had fully realized personalities. Mm-hmm. But then when she became this modern Clara, it's, as we've talked about on numerous episodes, there's nothing to like latch onto of what makes her her.
All right, so Jamie.
Yeah.
I'm going to need your reassurance that this show is worth continuing to cover. Because I have felt disappointed so many more times than I have felt pleased with the way episodes and seasons have turned out, that I am starting to be like concerned. And I had said when everything that went down with Martha that the show had been on the chopping block for me, like mentally, because I was just disgusted. And it felt like things were starting to turn around. And then this happens at the end of a whole thing with Amy, where I wound up actually liking Amy a whole lot more than I did initially, because I had a lot of worries about her. Mm-hmm. But I still had so many problems with like the whole pregnancy storyline and the way that was handled. And I am concerned because there is a lot more of this show to go. So there's a ton of potential, but I don't want to put myself through it if this is going to be how I feel all the time.
I understand. I don't have an exact answer for you because here's where I'm going to be very honest. By this point in the series, I was losing interest. And I stopped watching. A new doctor shows up at a point. I checked that out. Wasn't a huge fan of the writing. And I stopped watching. And then I would wait until, usually on New Year's Day, I think, the BBC or BBC America would play a marathon.
Okay.
And so I would record all of the episodes and then just binge a season. What I'm going to need to do, because I'm in a different frame of mind about the show now than I was then, where then it was like a slow decline of me being more and more disappointed and not liking the choices that Stephen Moffat was making. Mm-hmm. I've changed my mind about the 11th Doctor and about Amy. So I can't 100% say, yeah, it's been a good run, but let's cut our losses now, because I don't know if I'm going to change my mind about how I feel. I need to rewatch those seasons, and I have sort of fell off of getting really far ahead.
Okay.
So I'm going to need to do a little binging and let you know. There's a few more episodes of this season. I mean, this is the technical last episode of season 7, but there's a couple of specials. So I think we should cover those.
Yeah, and I'm interested in hearing from like listeners as well, because we've actually gotten a fair amount of like good feedback on the show, which I was afraid if I just like was too hard on it that people wouldn't react well. And so far people have been very understanding of not liking certain things, and even agreed with me, a lot of the time. It's
not like you don't like it for stupid reasons. Like, you have legitimate reasons that make sense of like, this is a problem. And us having an issue with like how this girl is written, and she's supposed to be our avatar. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing to like hold on to. It's really hard to be invested. There are people who really love the next Doctor. Not as many who love 11. And then there's a Doctor after that is the current Doctor. So, I know there's a lot of people who want to see what you think of certain companions that are upcoming and that kind of thing. I just, out of fairness for you, because it's, people might think that we just sit around and have a chat and put up an episode, but it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of time. I'm not going to say, like, we have to keep going because it's worth it. Because honestly, I don't know. It wasn't for me. That's why I stopped watching. Mm-hmm. So I want to give the show a fair chance. I'm trying to figure out where it is that Moffat left, but I think it's not till this newest Doctor that's currently the Doctor. So that's still like 2 or 3 seasons.
Is this John Hurt? What was that?
That is John Hurt.
Okay. Because that was such a weird moment. Where
it's
it
a
ends
very
with,
weird
like,
moment.
We present the Doctor or John Hurt as the Doctor, which they've never done a preview peek before. It's always been, well, everybody knows who's been cast, but within the episode, we're going to act like it's a big surprise what they wind up looking like and yada, yada, yada.
He's not what you think, so that's another thing.
Okay.
The next episode to watch is the 50th anniversary.
Have you checked the Amazon thing? Is that the next episode, like, according to them, or should I find
probably
it?
not. I will check for
Okay.
you. It may be under its own special thing. I can't remember. But the next episode is the 50th anniversary episode. And then the one after that, I believe, is a Christmas episode.
Okay.
So in between now and when we get through the Christmas episode, I will watch the next season and really be honest about whether I think that it's something that we would enjoy discussing.
Okay.
Even though I don't want to stop podcasting with you, and so we're just going to have to find another show.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I figure, obviously, if it turns out we don't want to keep going with this, that we'll find something. But I just, I don't want to be negative every week, and I feel like I am negative far more often than I'm positive, and I don't enjoy that. It's not fun for me. And if people are enjoying listening, that, like, makes me feel better, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still, it gives me anxiety to put out an episode that I know I'm just, like, trashing something.
Yeah, I mean, Chris and I have talked about this a lot, especially, like, somebody recently was asking if you were going to do season 3 of Stranger Things, and I talked about when you were covering Daredevil, and it might not have been Daredevil, it might have been Luke Cage, but you really didn't like it. And it wasn't fun for me as a listener to listen to you really hate something. Mm-hmm. And she and I have, there's, like, with the Vampire Diaries even, she's like, please tell me that it comes out of this slump because this isn't as fun as it was. And I've watched that whole series, and I can say, yes, it definitely bounces back. This is just a weird thing that's happening. I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. But with this show, I haven't been as excited. Like, there's a reason why I'm not really far ahead anymore in my rewatch, because there's a part of me that's like...
That was part of my signal, honestly, was when you were like, I haven't kept watching. I've been like, oh, yikes, that feels not great. Like,
I just didn't enjoy what I had seen, and so it's like now we're at a point where I'm like, well, here's where I stopped being as invested. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm fully able to, admit where I have a changed my opinion about things with this show for good and bad. I'm not going to say, as much as people love Doctor Who, that we should keep going if it's not going to be enjoyable for both of us. And if it turns out, like, in a whole season, there's one episode where I'm like, this one's really great, that's not worth my time or yours.
And I don't know, like, I might be open to, like, going, like, hopping between episodes that are supposed to be particularly good, but I'm not sure that I even want, like, part of me feels like, well, that might be interesting. Another part of me is like, yeah, but that's not what I do. Yeah. That's not how Unspoiled works. So
And Doctor Who's unfortunately not even that kind of show.
Yeah, you can't jump in and out and not have any context usually.
Because even in little bits, there's going to be like history between the Doctor and the companion that factors into what's happening in this one. I think the only episode you can watch without having watched any other Doctor Who episode is Blink. I think that's the only one. Because the Doctor and Martha are not in it.
Is the other one. Because the companion doesn't really factor into Midnight.
Yeah. Midnight is a good choice too. Because you get the Doctor and you get this cool story, but you don't have to know any of his history or the companion's history. And with Blink, it's sort of the same thing because the Doctor's barely in it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, I'm not going to tell somebody like, ooh, you really need to watch The Girl Who Waited. Great episode. You're not going to understand any of it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope the listeners, I know that there are people who are completists and they're still really, really invested in the show, and I would like to also hear from people like, please tell me after season 8, like, I'd already dropped off and I jumped back on when this newest Doctor happened.
Right.
And I tried to watch the season that I'd skipped, and I was not paying attention. I was there was nothing that was holding my interest, but I also think I was at a point where I was like, oh, I just don't like this Doctor, so I don't care.
Yeah.
I know that there are people who really like the next Doctor. So I'd like some reassurance too. Like, do you guys think?
Because
that
there's
it's worth
a lot left, like I said, and because there is so much left, it's like it's wide open whether or not things improve. But also, if we keep going, that means that we won't get to start a different project for years and years in the future. Yeah,
there's 13 episodes. I don't think the 13th episode has started yet. So there's 12 episodes that are complete, or 12 seasons that are complete. I haven't even watched the new season because I got behind on the last season, and they're all like on my DVR. God, they're on my DVR, but I haven't watched them.
Well, honestly, it makes me feel a little bit better that you are understanding where I'm coming from here, because I don't want to disappoint people and drop something. I don't drop shows often. Yeah. I've done it with Scandal, which deserved it. I did it with Walking Dead, which will forever be an example for me of bad TV. Whenever I need to talk about something being done badly, The Walking Dead will come up in the conversation.
Same.
And when I started this, I fully intended to just see it through. And I got to be honest, you guys, I am coming up blank as to why the show is as beloved as it is. I know that, I said this sort of at the beginning, that I try to come at it from the perspective of something like Buffy, where it's like campy and goofy sometimes, but there's like a lot of gems in it that still withstand the test of time, despite bad effects, despite writing that maybe is like problematic now. But the things that have been like not great for me have been persistent. It hasn't been within one episode they've just handled a topic badly. It's been like I said with Clara, she's just a perfect summary of the weird misogyny of the writers. And it's not always the case. They've managed to sidestep it, I mean, every now and then. But it's come up enough that it feels like it's more the case than not. And I was talking to Miles. I said something about Doctor Who on when we were recording. I think we were recording on Mistborn or Midnight Sun. It was a recent episode where I mentioned being frustrated with Doctor Who, and he was like, I just can't understand your problems with the show. And for Miles to say that, who finds fault with so many things, to say that he doesn't get how I have certain problems. I feel like it's like I'm in a parallel universe here. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like everybody is acting like this is this classic that they love, and I don't understand it yet, and I want to. And I feel like an asshole, to be honest. Like I feel like kind of a dickhead, and I don't really know what to do with that feeling, you know?
I'm trying to think back because I understand what you're saying. I really do. And on the other hand, I started watching this show with my friend. We had the DVDs. She'd borrowed them from somebody. And we went through the whole first season in like a day. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this show is so fun. And I really loved it. But I also wasn't picking it apart. I wasn't analyzing it in any way. And so I just sort of carried on with, I became a Doctor Who fan. Mm-hmm. I was really into David Tennant as the Doctor and held on to that. And the things that I loved, I still love, but a lot of that is, I love just little pieces of it. I don't love the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I love certain doctors. I love certain characters. I love the TARDIS. I'm just a big fan of the way it looks. Like, it's little things, but I don't think it's a perfect show. And I have problems with it. And rewatching it and doing this, I've had a lot of problems with it. And I can, brush some aside because it's for kids or whatever. But the problems I had with what Stephen Moffat did, while I let some of those go because I found things that I loved so much more than I remembered in seasons 5 and 6. That goodwill only goes so far because the second half of season 7 hasn't been great.
Yeah.
And at least with Martha, like, there was a reason that you were so disappointed and so upset about what they did with her, because she was a character who from the start were like, cool, she's smart, she's a doctor, she's clever. She had like a personality, and the one thing we didn't like was she's just, has this crush on the doctor that she's not willing to let go. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, like, she was a character that if she popped back now, I'd be like, oh, I'm so excited to see Martha. Mm-hmm. But Clara, I don't know who Clara is, and I've been watching her for 8 episodes. And that's a problem.
Sort of like made this season about her.
Yeah.
And and then it turns out it's not actually really about her, which feels kind of like a waste of my time. Like, all she's there for is to make sure that everything that we have seen goes the way that we saw it.
Yeah. Which
is not interesting. And her decision to sacrifice herself and her life on behalf of this man, when I just being a companion is already such a sacrifice in its way. That's just something that
it feels unearned.
Yeah.
Like, if Amy had done it, or if Rose had done it, mm-hmm. I would have believed why.
Right.
But even if Donna had done it, I would have believed why.
Yeah, because at least they spent an entire season together.
And they established relationships. Mm-hmm. And with Clara, it's been one adventure after another, but no attempt on his part to actually get to know her, which means there's no attempt on the show's part for us to get to know her.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't get to know her, and he like tells her about the fact that he's met her before and that she's died, but then, and he only does it because he knows that she's not going to remember. And I really hate that he doesn't choose to actually share it with her. And she finds out sort of by accident. And there's a real sense when she sacrifices herself that she's doing it because she knows that she's already done it. Not even because, well, you mean so much to me and you've done so much for the world and the world needs you. It really feels like, well, we already know I did it, so I guess I better get on with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sort of feels like, honestly, the way that I think a lot of viewers would feel watching it probably is like, well, I'm not interested in watching her deciding whether to do it or not because I know that she does. So can we just skip that part because we all know how this goes? But you don't want to like make the subtext text there and have her sort of seem to be coming at it that way either. She's giving her life up. And then the shoehorning of River in? Mm-hmm. What is happening?
Here's the funny thing. You know how I feel about River Song.
Mm-hmm.
River Song is one of my favorite characters in this show, in probably anything. I fucking love her. I had no memory of her being in this episode.
Oh my God.
When she showed up, I was like, oh shit, really? Because I did not remember her being in this. They have a genuine kiss in this, and I did not remember it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been waiting for them, because I love their chemistry. I think she and Matt Smith actually have really great chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I've been waiting for them to have a kiss where he's not flailing around like he can't believe this is happening, and what does this mean, lips on lips? Like, he kisses her, and he meant it, and it was great, and that's my favorite part of the whole episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't remember any of it. That's a problem.
It's so weird because, like, okay, look, all right, guys, I'm just going to say, we're not going to cover this in, like, sequential order, all right? We're just not. I can't do it. It's just, it's so weirdly set up. And what are these guys here? The Whispering Men?
The Whisper Man or something? Yeah.
What is their relevance to any of this, to the Great Intelligence? Like...
I have no answer. I'm going to make something up. They are like the snowmen, but like now they're men. I don't know. I don't know. It's not explained. And to have a villain like the Great Intelligence who has come back a number of times throughout the 60 whatever years of this show, 50 whatever years, for him to be defeated so instantly, it doesn't feel like a threat.
I mean, the Great Intelligence ran up against Clara before, right?
In Victorian England with the snowmen.
So he has to know that she's going to be where's your intelligence? That's in your name. I don't see it. He's like doing a thing and it's a very like Greek myth sort of like by the very method of attempting to avoid this thing, I will cause it to happen kind of thing. But
yeah, it's a paradox. I have a little piece of trivia about what exact type of paradox this is. It's an ontological paradox. The Doctor might not have invited 21st century Clara to travel with him if he had not met the echoes of her in the Dalek asylum and Victorian London, but if she never traveled with the Doctor, those echoes never would have existed.
Well, I would think that the Great Intelligence would have, like, noticed. I mean, the Great Intelligence was also... She got hacked in her body by him, right? Wasn't that him?
He was... Yes, essentially, yes.
Why isn't he seeing the weirdness of that?
Here's what I think happened when this season was being put together. They're heading towards the 50th anniversary, which was a really big deal. They really wanted to find a way to bring all of the past Doctors into the present series. And this was a way to do it. So they built around that. What's a villain that we can put in here so he's got a villain to fight? that make some kind of sense because, oh, the great intelligence, he escaped and now okay, so we've got that. And then how can we get to see all of these past doctors in one way or another before we do the big 50th shebang?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's been this mystery of Clara, so we'll have Clara go through his time stream and save his life. The great intelligence will go in there and destroy his life, and she'll go in and save it. And then we get to see the first Doctor and the fourth Doctor and flashes of the fifth and the seventh and whatever. Actually, I don't know if we see the seventh.
I gotta be honest, too, like, the whole idea of invading his life, I think is a really neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think
if it lasted more than 30 seconds.
Right, this is what I mean. Like, I think this is, when it comes down to it, what frustrates me the most about Doctor Who is that I keep seeing these very interesting concepts with ideas behind them that I'm like, oh, that might be interesting to see. And then they focus on the least interesting part and do nothing with what I thought was like had the most potential and the most imagination to it. And so it's this odd combo of complete lack of imagination, but there is something, a kernel that's like really interesting. And I keep just feeling so angry because I love the overall idea, and I wait 45 minutes for them to do that, and they just don't bother.
So in this episode, what was that?
The great intelligence, I don't feel like I have any idea what he wants. I don't get him. And I thought in this episode that we would find out exactly really what he's after, because we keep seeing him just trying to eat thoughts. And is that it? Is that all? He just wants to eat people's like consciousness, and that's really it, and he's just mad that the Doctor keeps stopping him from eating people?
He doesn't say that in this episode, so I don't know.
I really thought in this episode that we would get to see a little bit more of what he is about, and finally, because it's the finale ep, like, I thought maybe we'd actually finish this season with him kind of in a moment of like, here's what I've really been after all along. And the season ends not in triumph, but on a bit of a cliffhanger. And he looks like he's got the advantage, and we find out that he had been after something very specific, and we were being distracted by all of these sort of low-level side quest plans that weren't really what he was all about. And that the gentlemen are going to be like the manifestation of that, you know? These gentlemen show up. You can't tell me what they're even for. It sort of just seems like they're puppets for him to jump into if the original one that he's occupying right now is damaged. That it just feels like they're backups. And they can be his henchmen to stop people's hearts. Which, okay, that's...
Do you remember, you keep referring to the gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember in that episode, in Hush, the gentlemen had their own little minions?
Oh, that were like in straitjackets and stuff, right? Yeah.
And they like flounced around and got the people for the gentlemen to take their hearts or whatever, held them down for them. So these guys who look like the gentlemen with sharp teeth and no eyes are the henchmen. But there's no explanation of why the great intelligence needs them or why they are whispering.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a lot of ideas going on in here with no real direction. And that's a problem that we ran across in earlier seasons, especially in the finales, that we complained a lot about with Russell T Davies. That you've got a lot of ideas going here, and none of them are connected or leading to any satisfying conclusion.
Right.
And that's what this feels like.
I kind of thought that maybe we'd also find out that the Great Intelligence was behind the whole fucking red crimson horror thing as well, because neither of us really got the point of that episode. And
I had to sit here and go, wait, which was that the one under the sea? No, wait, Crimson Horror. That's Crimson Tide.
Yeah, so like the whole thing with the Great Intelligence just feels completely unformed. He doesn't even feel like a real villain.
Yeah.
And I another one that was like a really interesting idea to me was the episode where the cubes appear all over the world. And I really, really thought that was going to be something. That was the planting of a seed of a villain that we would see again. And nothing. Nothing. I can't tell you guys how shocked I am by that still.
That was this season, was it not?
Yeah. It was.
Oh, it feels like 50 years ago that we were watching my precious Rory in his pants. Still have that screen cap on my desktop.
I would love it if you like made that your lock screen on your phone.
I'm tempted. I think about him a lot. He's so handsome.
because that I thought was a really cool idea. Again, that I really thought was the foundation for a long-term bit that was going to, we were going to find out what they had really been about. That this was the first attempt by a people that were going to try again. And they may turn up in later seasons, but that's not the same thing. That isn't going to feel like what I thought was going to be an ongoing thing. And to me, a much more interesting thing right out of the gate than the Great Intelligence, who's just trying to like consume consciousnesses, which I don't really have the same sort of visceral reaction to that I do when there's like, it's just such an esoteric sort of threat, Yeah. And I don't understand what he does beyond. It's sort of like he's just a shark. You know what a shark does? They swim and eat and make little sharks. And that's all. That's sort of how the Great Intelligence feels. He's just like swimming around, eating minds, and there's no greater purpose or desire to him. But yet he's so angry at the Doctor. And I'm like, you don't even have a big plan that he thwarted. You're just mad that he stood in front of you at the buffet and wouldn't let you go to town. Like, that's not enough for me to care that, like, I don't know. I don't get it. I'm so mad, you guys. I really am. And then this whole thing with him, like, going into the Doctor's timeline and being like, oh, yeah, I'll die, but I'll finally be at peace, which, like, oh, was peace what you were after? Because I didn't know that, and you never gave any indication of that. So this is the first I'm hearing of it. And it would have been cool if I felt like that was of interest to you, but okay, we're just learning that. And even though I will be dead, you will be in pain and, like, suffering for all eternity. Metal. Awesome. I'm here for that. That's a really good idea. But he should know the threat Clara poses because he has literally been in contact with her in multiple iterations, multiple times. What is intelligent about him other than the fact that he consumes consciousness? There's nothing about him that says intelligence to me.
I agree.
I'm sorry, Jamie. Jamie sounds like I'm going to start making her cry in a second.
I have never understood what the point of him is. At least with the Daleks, you're like, yeah, they want to kill everybody. And even with the Cybermen, yeah, they want to upgrade everybody. Mm-hmm. The Angels want to displace you out of time and use that energy, that time loss, to feed themselves. Like, I understand what their general motivation is. This doesn't feel threatening, except you're telling me it is. So I guess it is. It's just, I can't do that thing that I try to do sometimes where I'm like, well, this is how I felt about it and this is what I think it means, and try to give a reason for stuff. Mm-hmm. Because I enjoyed it for whatever reason. This, I just didn't all I remembered about this episode was that Clara did something that made her be able to go back through time and save the Doctor. That's literally all I remembered about this episode. And then they call it the name of the Doctor, and I was like, wait, did we learn his name? And no, we did not.
No, we don't. His name opens the tomb where he's buried. He didn't
say it, River did, and we didn't hear her.
Right. Which is another, like, why? It feels like they just wanted us to find out that River is dead, and I say is dead, will be dead. It's not even totally clear to me if she's dead now, because the battle that supposedly kills them hasn't happened yet. So she might be alive out there. And if not, it feels like they just kind of want the Doctor to be single again, because him, having a wife running around isn't great for adding sexual tension to things, which they clearly love doing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe she's going to pop up again. But I also felt like there was a moment in this episode where Clara, who I really felt happy about the fact that there didn't seem to be an attraction between her and the Doctor. The Doctor seemed to be sort of into her, but she didn't seem to think that about him. There's a distinct, like, what? You're married? She's an ex? Oh my God, kind of thing. And I was like, are we really doing this again? And the answer is, no, we're not doing this again, because none of that mattered, because she's gone now. So I don't even know what that was about. They felt the need to include this, like, jealousy and envy that comes to nothing. Anyway, can't you just have her be shocked that the Doctor had this kind of relationship at all, rather than have it seem to be born of the fact that she is suddenly interested when she hasn't seemed to be at all this whole time?
It's because they can't get through this show without having the companion be into the Doctor. And I don't think that's the way it was in the past.
And this is what I mean when I say that the show wants the Doctor to be like cool hero guy all the time. That's part of it, is there's no woman that can resist him. And they had Donna be like the lone exception, and they honestly sort of play it as she has bad taste. There's like a sense to that. Of course, Donna doesn't like him because she doesn't know how to choose men well.
Okay, so I have a question for you, because there are spoilers in the world that I'm not sure if you have been able to avoid.
Okay.
Do you know who plays the next two Doctors?
I know the look of the guy who I think is the next one is an older dude with, like, curly hair. Mm-hmm. But I don't know his name. Okay.
Do you know the one after him?
I don't. I know that there's a lady Doctor that's coming up. I don't know if she's after him or if there's somebody else.
No, she's the one after him. So you do know that there's a woman Doctor.
Yes.
Okay. So...
Because I saw the fucking hullabaloo when that was announced and how everybody reacted as if it were just unthinkable.
Since you've started Broadchurch... Mm-hmm. Do you know that the woman Doctor is Beth, the mom?
Yes. Yeah, I know who it is that was cast, yeah.
Okay. That's part of the reason I wanted to wait for you to see Broadchurch, because I wanted you to know Rory, and then I wanted you to watch Broadchurch before we ever got to her, so that you understood Jodie Whittaker, because she's really excellent as an actress. So. Yeah,
and she popped up in... Black Mirror, I feel like. So I've seen her act before.
Yeah. That's why I held off on Broadchurch, was those two pieces of casting. I wanted you to know Rory so you could see him in a different type of role once you watch Broadchurch, but I wanted you to know her as an actress before you saw her as Doctor.
Gotcha.
So you know that the next guy is not this, like, attractive young buck that they've been doing. That... I think does change the dynamic quite a bit.
Okay.
If the tables were turned and they've got this woman playing the Doctor, if every dude that traveled with her, if suddenly all of her companions were only dudes, how would that make you feel?
I mean, on the one hand, it would feel like, well, fair play. That's, I mean, it's sort of like the answer that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was like, well, when will you be satisfied with the number of women on the Supreme Court? And she responded, when it's all of them.
Yeah.
Because we've had that for so long the other way, so why not? But on the other hand, I have just come to terms with the fact that I am not like a romantic person. And I don't really give a shit about people being into each other most of the time. It can be occasionally done really well when people have excellent chemistry with each other, which is not as often as one would wish. And I really enjoy seeing men and women be able to have a profound platonic friendship, because it's not portrayed in a lot of media at all. So I kind of mixed feelings is my answer. On the one hand, I think it would be only fair. On the other hand, can we not think of anything else at this point after all this time, you know?
So if the Doctor as a woman only had male companions, and those male companions were always into her, it would be just as annoying.
I don't know that it would be just as, because this is particularly annoying due to the way that media has been up until this point. If that were the case with her, it would be irritating because it would feel like it was a real lack of imagination, but it would at least be, I think, an interesting send up and dynamic that I could dig my teeth into a little bit and just be like, oh, okay, look at how different this feels when we're on this end of it instead. So that's something, you know. Also, that hinges on, are all of her companions insanely hot? That's the other thing, because the Doctor has had exactly 0 unattractive companions. And most of them are beyond attractive. They are, one of them is a model in the story. Like, you know, like, God. So if she's got all male companions and they're all into her, but 40% or 50% of them would stand no chance, are not attractive, and aren't like the same energy as the female companions have been for the Doctor thus far, it would feel not as much fun.
So ideally, her companion should be Aidan Turner.
Yeah, every single season, forever.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is not who they cast as a companion.
That's a shame. Is he at least a doctor at some point?
God damn it. If they really wanted to cast someone insanely hot to be the Doctor, that's who it should be.
Aidan Turner, I would watch that.
I would watch the shit out of that. I would never delete it. I would watch it every day. I don't even care. Story, who cares? Take off your shirt.
Go back and finish Poldark. I never finished it.
It's boring.
That's too bad. It's a shame.
I haven't finished it either because I liked the first season, but it didn't. He was really good in it, but the story wasn't grabbing me. I'd rather rewatch Being Human. That's what we should cover. I wish we both hadn't seen it.
Yeah, there's a lot out there that I'm like, after I finish watching it, I'm like, that was amazing, and I wish I'd never done that because now it's ruined and I can't cover it.
Please look at your text messages.
My texts. Okay, hold on. Oh, Rory's her lock screen, everybody. And he's even wearing Christmas colors, so it kind of works. Unless that's orange. Is that orange? Is that red?
We'll
say
orange.
It's red. We'll say it's red. It's Christmas time. Look at him. Perfect. I love
and
it.
it's very pandemic Christmas time with his green scrubs. That's sad.
Yeah, that's true. The pandemic situation. We got to put a mask on him. Somebody Photoshop a mask onto this, please.
I don't want to cover up his cute face. Yeah, so I don't know what else to say. There's all this cool stuff with if you've been watching Doctor Who since you've been alive, Seeing flashes of earlier Doctors had to be really exciting.
The conference call. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Is this something we've seen before?
No.
So here goes another, like, interesting concept that, it sort of reminds me of Recovering Legend of Korra right now for our wedding fundraiser. And people are able to go into the spirit world, but they, like, leave their body behind, and that can make them very vulnerable. And, it really was, like, giving me vibes of that. And this is when the dudes show up, which, again, you know I keep, like, comparing them to the gentlemen because literally, how can you not? But I do love the, like, rhyming that keeps coming up. A lot of times the rhyming can, like, when this is done, because it's a trope, it's like, oh, we're really trying to seem sinister, but it's really just goofy. But the writing of the rhymes themselves was well done. And I thought worked really, really well. And so that is part of why it breaks my heart that they didn't really turn out to be anything, because so many elements of what they were worked for me a lot. And the whole, like, the murderer in jail who has this information, why does he have it?
Because he could hear the whispers.
Why, though?
I don't have an answer to that question. I thought they were going to be telling us that this was Jack the Ripper.
I mean, it felt like that was, like, kind of what they were trying to do. And I expected him to be possessed by the great intelligence, or he's not a factor. But he's key to them finding out this information. And he passes on what turns out to be a sort of misleading message on purpose, it seems. But why would he be in on it when it doesn't seem like he had anything to do with the rest of what was happening?
Right. He has one secret that he will take to the grave, and it is discovered. She thinks that what's discovered is the secret.
Right.
But what's actually discovered is the grave.
Which...
And we've heard references to Trenzalore before. I don't know when. I think it's come up with River. I think she's asked, like, have we done Trenzalore? Which you would know, would you not? But
right, like, you that's where you died. So we think.
Maybe that's not what maybe she's just mentioned Trenzalore. I don't know. I know we've heard this name before. But him knowing it is weird. Because why would he know where he dies?
Like, because he's like, I can't visit, and this is really, like, being here is super dangerous. How did you find out? Well, whatever. I just, and to go back to the murderer, there was, like, this sort of conflict introduced between Jenny and Vastra, where they're like, well, can we keep him, like, he's supposed to be executed, but he's saying this in order to save his own life. And then it turns out, like, again, none of that ever comes up again. I thought we were going to have a whole thing with deciding whether to kill him or not, and then he was going to turn out to be kind of key somehow. None of that needed to be there at all, in any way. This all could have come to be found out by the Doctor without them even being part of the story, actually. And Jenny is killed because the gentlemen, like, come in and stop her heart, but then she's brought back, like, right away. And I really was, like, kind of impressed that they killed her off, because that's heartbreaking and terrible. I am, on the one hand, disappointed that we don't get, like, the long-term consequence and she's brought back, but also there's the whole bury your gaze trope, and it would be nice to not do that. So I totally get feeling relieved that that was not what was happening. She does disappear later, but that is undone. I will say another concept that I found really intriguing that I thought they would do more with was what it looks like when the past is undone, because we get to see Strax just completely like revert to basically being like a racist lunatic.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It's so upsetting.
And at
We've
that
grown
point,
to
Jenny
love
disappears
him.
again because the doctor had saved her life. And honestly, I don't know why I don't remember when that happened.
Wait, say again? Who's disappears again?
Jenny.
Oh, that's when Jenny disappears again, right.
Because when the doctor's life is,
Being fucked
erased, that means that anybody he saved is erased, and so she disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember when we originally met Jenny.
Yeah,
for her
same.
life to be saved.
Same.
Unless it was that episode when it was the finale of season 6, I think, when they fought the eye patch lady. Maybe that was when he saved her life by winning that battle. I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, like the whole thing with Strax and how much we love him and seeing him turn into this other thing is really, really upsetting. And I like sort of expected us to go a little bit further down that road. This is what, if I had been writing this episode, what I would have done is, had this not be solved in the finale, I would have him jump in and begin to fuck everything up. And the episode ends with like cuts between different characters and us seeing them transformed from somebody that we've grown to know and love to like a stranger who is terrible because other things have not worked out for them. And then the season ends on this like complete cliffhanger with things going to hell, and Clara wouldn't be able to literally just jump in there and like fix everything. It would have to be something more involved that she did, and it would give her a lot more like a feeling of more agency and intelligence within the situation. But I think that would be like a fun way to end things, is that like the next season we know we're going to have to deal with the fallout of stuff being undone.
If I had done it, this would take place over several episodes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We would lead up to it. And then you could have a cliffhanger. Cliffhangers aren't really things that they do on this show, and I think that they thought they left it on a cliffhanger, honestly.
I mean, no.
They kind of did. They left it on a question. Who's this guy? Who's this guy that she doesn't recognize, but what does the doctor actually say about him?
He says, "My name is a promise. It's something you choose." And he broke the promise.
Right.
And he says, I did what I did in the name of sanity and peace. And the doctor says, but not in my name.
Right. Not in the name of the doctor.
Right.
So, what do you... Because they show John Hurt as the doctor. So there's no question he's the doctor. But we know... We've seen... in this episode, all of the other versions of the Doctor.
Right.
So I think that what they felt like they were leaving this on was a kind of cliffhanger. This big question of, well, but then who is this guy?
It's just, I don't trust them anymore. That's what it comes down to. The kind of cliffhangers that are just questions, it's not enough, because there have been too many times where they've set up a question and the answer has been almost immediate in the like follow-up and not actually either satisfying or a real answer. You know, like how many times have we heard, oh yes, that's when the doctor died. But it turns out it's not really where the doctor died. The doctor was fine. Or that this is, you know, what we know, that this is where it's his undoing. It's not his undoing. He'll be fine. The fact that he says he was buried here and he actually does turn out to be here shocked me. That was the surprise, because I fully expected the tomb to be empty and for it to be like a whole thing that he winds up getting out of somehow. There have been, it's just one too many things of, we're going to build this up and make it seem like it's going to be this big mystery, and either answer it right away and it turns out to not be that important, or it's kind of a trick. So I am not feeling invested in this question about who this guy is, because I don't know that it's going to last more than half an episode, who he is and how it matters. They don't have a plan a lot of the time, I'm finding out. So who knows if what they said he was going to be to themselves when they wrote this episode is what he actually turns out to be when they begin writing the series next season. They could do whatever.
You're not wrong. It's unfortunate.
I just don't trust them. It's a bummer. I don't want to feel this way, but I like I said with the whole like Cube episode, I get thinking like, oh, that's neat. I wonder what that's going to be. And then it's literally just never comes up and it's nothing. They're telling me that this is something that's going to come up and be something, but I don't know they even know that. So, I don't know. I don't know, man. I feel sad. I feel sad today about this.
Well,
so many interesting things.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a whole bunch of trivia, but a lot of it was really for the audience, because
I
know we have a lot of people who have watched a lot of the old Doctor Who, and so the references in here meant more to them than it did to me. I've only been watching this show since the new series.
Okay.
But, you know, we see clips of different versions of Clara throughout his timeline. So we see when the first Doctor steals the TARDIS, and she tells him, oh no, do this one. It's more fun.
Right.
And we see like an original TARDIS before, because the TARDIS has a chameleon program or something and it's broken. So his TARDIS is stuck on this police box, but it's supposed to actually be able to blend in wherever it goes.
Right, right.
So the TARDIS that we see him leave with looks like a little canister, which is not nearly as interesting as a police box. So
no.
I would not have a TARDIS Christmas ornament if it just looked like a canister. So that was cute.
True.
Then we see the third Doctor as he's driving away in Bessie, which I assume was that car, whatever that means. The fourth Doctor is on Gallifrey. The fifth Doctor trapped in the Matrix. And this has like references to what episodes these things happened in.
Okay.
She's trying to find the sixth Doctor on his TARDIS. She watches the seventh Doctor hang onto his umbrella, and she runs after the second Doctor and the eighth Doctor. She watches the 10th Doctor as he stands in the library. That went by so fast I didn't even see David Tennant. And then the 9th Doctor runs past her. There's like, suggestions that the 3rd and 7th Doctors might have noticed her, and the 1st Doctor obviously did see her because she tells him, she speaks to him. So I'm sure that was really fun for people who are big fans of the history of this show.
Mm-hmm. Jamie,
I'm
so sorry.
It just didn't hit for me.
Ruined things for you in a way.
You didn't, honestly. like I said, I didn't remember any details about this episode, and back when I first watched this episode, I sort of left it being like, well, that was just convoluted, and I don't buy that Clara is supposed to be this important.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't come into this feeling like I'm super excited to talk about this episode, and I don't have a lot of defenses for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which normally, if you don't like an episode that I do like, I have my reasons for why I like it, and I can voice that. I just don't have anything to add to this because it just feels very disappointing.
Yeah.
And I'm not excited about anything I learned in this, and all of your points are valid because there are really good ideas in here, but none of them are realized. And the one that they do realize, Clara going into the Doctor's time stream and saving him in the past, like, I understand time travel, sure, whatever, but this, like, fundamentally changes everything,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, regarding they're coming up on the 50th anniversary and they're trying to tie some things back. I think that's another real, like, hang up that the show needs to get over, is how long that they have been on and how many other Doctors there have been and what they mean to people. It is fine to do an occasional little Easter egg, but they seem so preoccupied by that they let other things completely fly out the window with no, like, grounding to them because they're too excited to show this, like, you know, clip of something or the way that this it's foolish from a writer's perspective. If it fits in, then it will do so organically and it will work because it just works within the story. If it doesn't, it's going to feel extremely strange. And how many people who watch this will even know what the Easter egg is because the shows aren't even accessible anymore. Yeah. The originals. It'd be one thing if this was something that you could go and binge and, you know, sure, it's from before people were born, but they can still find it. But it's not even that. And so the way that they keep on sort of clinging to it.
There's been this sort of exact debate to do with the most recent season of The Mandalorian. Without giving away any spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
There have been things that have happened in season 2 of The Mandalorian that directly relate to things that happened on the 2 previous animated series.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been people that have been like, I shouldn't have to watch those shows to understand this show.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then there's the people like me, I did watch those shows very recently and loved them. So all these little things, I see them, I see the Easter eggs, and I'm super excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Jason has only sporadically watched Clone Wars and Rebels with me, and he doesn't pick up on those things, and he enjoys it maybe more than I do because he loves the show so much, and it doesn't affect his viewing of it. Those Easter eggs are there, but it doesn't affect your enjoyment of the show if you don't know what those are.
There is one episode recently that I would disagree with you on, that it didn't affect my viewing because it was over and Owen and I were both just like, well, that didn't feel like anything. And Owen was like, yeah, that felt a little bit like bullshit, honestly. Because both of us did not have any context for the person or what was being referenced.
Which episode?
You know which episode. Somebody to do with a Halloween costume that you happen to have.
Really? So, okay. That might be that episode in particular, knowing who she is probably important.
Yeah.
But every other little reference that you get, sometimes they're really, really small. Sometimes it's just you see something. And, like, I'll see something and recognize it and be like, oh, that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Jason won't recognize it, and it doesn't affect his viewing. I don't think you have to watch Clone Wars or Rebels to enjoy The Mandalorian. I think it will make your enjoyment of The Mandalorian grow if you have. Whereas on Doctor Who, sometimes they reference things and will mention it in the show, like, I don't know, I don't know what this means. And we'll have to have people come to us and say, oh, well, you know, with the third Doctor, this, and this. And they just assume that everybody watching the show is a super fan enough to have known that.
Right.
Which they should know that's not true, because they specifically targeted new viewers with this young Doctor and these hot companions. They were actively trying to get new viewers who didn't have the history of Doctor Who under their belts.
This is part of, like, what was so, like, it made me sort of incredulous was when that would happen, but we still had that weird bit where Amy introduces herself at the beginning of every episode that starts in, like, what, season 6?
Yes.
And I was like, why are you explaining something that can be easily found out in episodes that are on streaming and can be binged, but you're throwing info out that nobody can find anymore except on a wiki and acting like I should just know what that is? Those two things don't go together, guys.
And the Great Intelligence is a prime example of that, because that's a villain from previous seasons, not in the reboot. And it meant nothing to me. And I honestly, when I watched that episode, the Snowman episode, didn't know that this was somebody that the Doctor had encountered before. And it didn't change how I felt about that episode. I liked that episode. But then
it's just the difference between Easter eggs and tie-ins.
Yeah.
What you're talking about on The Mandalorian are Easter eggs. They're not necessarily even to do with the plot. It's just a little thing you'll see in the background, or a name that gets kind of thrown out there, or a location that somebody mentions having been at with a reference to, like, something that you know of from something else. You don't need to know it, and not knowing it has no impact.
And
but
I'm no Star Wars expert. Sorry.
Well, no, it was just basically what we already said, which is, like, it's stuff that winds up being pretty important.
Yeah.
And if I don't have people, like, explaining it to me, I miss stuff. And that's no longer, or like the way you were talking about with this episode and the 50-year anniversary coming up, it was written around the Easter eggs is how it feels a little bit more, which then they're no longer Easter eggs. They are the point. And the plot is secondary, and that's no good at all. You can't have that.
I'm trying to think of another instance on another show where it was like, well, they wanted to get to this point, and so it was Game of Thrones. It was season 8 of Game of Thrones. They wanted to get to a particular point for the ending, and so they started the season out with okay, we have to get here, and however we need to do, we just do it. With no real thought put into, at least seemingly, it doesn't seem like they put a lot of thought into how to get to those things. How do we get Daenerys to make this turn?
Right.
This very sudden heel turn that we haven't really alluded to enough to make it make sense. Well, it doesn't matter. She's just going to do it. Jon won't fuck her anymore. Okay, that's good enough. They built it backwards. And that never feels good as a viewer to watch something where you can see they're just trying to get to that point. However they can, they don't really care how they get there. And that's what this feels like too.
And it feels like that in some ways just because of how it opens, because we didn't really talk about it, but the episode basically starts off with Clara telling us, I was born to save the Doctor.
Yeah.
And then works backward, showing us exactly how that happened. Odd choice. I don't really understand why they didn't save it as a bit of a surprise. That she jumps into the time stream, and instead they tell us from the top. That's the whole point of her. Why do it that way? Did they think that we wouldn't get it? Because there's plenty of other things I don't get, but that's not one of them.
Didn't they do this once before? Maybe not in the same way where we see it at the beginning, but there's something, I don't know. Maybe I'm not thinking of this show. I feel like this is a conversation we've had before, though, about, like, they obviously wanted this moment, so they built a whole episode around it.
Yeah, we definitely have had that talk before.
Yeah.
I don't remember what, but yeah, 100%.
And given what Neil Gaiman said in his interview, it really makes me think that Stephen Moffat went into this, you know, Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill are leaving after episode 5. We don't have a full season with them, so we're going to need a new companion. We have this Christmas episode. How about wouldn't this be cool if we bring back Jenna Coleman? Mm-hmm. It's another Clara. Well, now we'll have her as the companion. Oh, and she's a mystery. She keeps popping up over time. We'll figure it out later.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to, especially if you're going to build a season around a mystery, you have to know the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that make it a mystery. Not just, you can't just tell me she's impossible.
Yeah. And
I
would really have liked it if she was kind of in on the mystery rather than it happening to her.
Right. Like, if she had memories of those times or something.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, my aunt got me a t-shirt. She knew I loved Doctor Who. She got me a t-shirt, and it was an Impossible Girl t-shirt. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that I don't care about the Impossible Girl. I just thanked her for the shirt. It's very nice, thank you. She got Jason this really cool shirt that's like a diagram of, like, putting together a sonic screwdriver. Looks like blueprints. Cool. And it was really cool, and I get the Impossible Girl. And I was like...
Because you're a girl. The boy gets the mechanics. He gets the blueprints. He gets the stuff that has to do with boy stuff. And you get the thing that says girl on it.
Yeah. I mean, she also got me a poster of the exploding TARDIS that Vincent van Gogh painted.
Oh, yeah. I remember you mentioning that now.
That was really cool. I would have rather had that on a t-shirt. You know? But, like, this Impossible Girl t-shirt where I'm just like, thanks. Any other companion would have been better, but...
If she had been, like, aware that she was in multiple places... Because when she tells him, don't get that one, take this one, you'll have a lot more fun, that feels like she knows what she is.
Yeah. Well, because she did... Well, I guess she didn't. I don't know. It's very unclear. Does she remember who she is through time or no?
It doesn't seem like she does when the doctor's asking her... Like, well, haven't I seen you before? When she's the governess, she doesn't remember, does she? She doesn't know.
She doesn't appear to. But that, at the time...
Now, see, if she did appear to, but she didn't want to tell him, that would be way more fun. If she's just like, me? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never met you before. And we're like, oh, yeah, you do. What's up with you? That's much more interesting.
But see, that episode was written before he had this idea.
Exactly.
So when we see her as the governess, or the barmaid specifically, in this episode, she's got a little smirk. It's a very knowing kind of smirk. Mm-hmm. Like she knows what she's up to. But that episode didn't play like she was the same girl who was a Dalek.
Right. Well,
here's the only other bit of trivia that I found interesting, personally.
Okay.
Clara lives in Chiswick, which is also where Donna lives.
Wait, where is?
Chiswick?
What's Chiswick. In Chiswick?
That's where Clara lives.
Oh, so she's from the same town?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
And maybe that would mean something if they intended on it meaning something, which I don't think they did. But I thought that was interesting. We do have a review. We're going to lose all of our listeners after this episode, but we do have a review. This is from Shane Gallagher from the U.S. 2 hilarious queens, 5 stars. I apologize in advance, Shane. We are no longer funny.
That is maybe a postcard. I apologize in advance. We are no longer funny.
Write it down so you don't forget it.
Oh, you're right. I got to do that. Hold on. Okay, go ahead and read it. I'm going to write it down.
Only started listening 2 weeks ago, and I'm already up to season 4. Listening to these fantastic women go through Doctor Who feels like I'm binging the series with 2 friends. It is so nice to revisit the series that I was obsessed with as a child, with their unique and clever perspectives. In a time where we feel very isolated, Natasha and Jamie have spread joy. This is my first Unspoiled podcast I've listened to, and it certainly won't be the last. Thank you, girls.
Aw, see, now I feel so guilty. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too. There was a run there where we were really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. And I really do want to hear, guys, like, if you're like, yeah, you don't like it and there's good reasons and I still enjoy listening to you, I'm willing to take bullets if you guys feel like that's still entertaining for you to a point. I will say to a point. I'm not going to be like, I'm going to do a rewatch of The Room once a week for a year, you know. But I do, like, if y'all are like, yeah, it's been kind of a bummer. These are things that I really like, and you've been kind of sucking all the joy out of it. Honestly, as much as it might hurt me to hear, I want to know, you know. Yeah,
and we don't want to do that.
That's not the point of Unspoiled. It's literally meant to bring joy because somebody is getting the excitement that you got the first time you watched a thing is the intention.
Yeah.
So if I'm not doing that, I don't, like, I'm not sure that is what I want to keep doing. If I'm not accomplishing that goal, I don't know that it's worthwhile. But I don't know. I really don't. So I really do want to hear from you guys and what you think of. And if there, you know, is something that you're like, I've been waiting for you to be finished with it because I want you to cover such and such.
Survivor.
Oh my God.
Please, can we just cover Survivor?
There goes another show. You keep picking long shit, Jamie. How many seasons of that are there? Like 40?
No, I don't think we would need to cover every season of Survivor, but I think it would be really interesting.
What a weird, like, I'm just thinking, for some reason, Survivor and the real world occupy the same place in my brain. Because that was sort of when all reality TV began to pop off. It was like around the same time. And so I'm just like, well, if we cover Survivor, we'll have to cover the real world. But that's absolutely not
first
true.
of all, you can't cover the real world because most of it is nowhere to be seen.
Oh, is it not? I didn't realize that.
Survivor, all of it is on CBS All Access.
Okay.
Every season. I don't really see the point of covering reality shows in the way that Unspoiled covers things necessarily. But Survivor might be an interesting one just because there's like machinations going on and, you know, people doing really smart things, people doing really stupid things, and it's really entertaining. But there's a lot of seasons and they're not all necessary. So there's that. The other thing I suggested was Top Chef, but I think you've watched it.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Top Chef.
Yeah.
Fucking Marcel.
Marcel.
His hair. Don't get me started.
But there's not a lot. I'm not sure if there's a lot that, like, I have watched that you haven't. That is like a viable option for being covered. There's a lot of shows that I think are really great that I would love to talk about, but I don't know if it's something that can be done in this way.
Yeah.
Like, The West Wing is really great. The Good Wife, I think, is a really, really fun show that...
well, you might have to be the unspoiled one, then.
Oh, I hate being the unspoiled one. It's really hard. It's really hard for me. There's also not a lot that I haven't seen. So if you have suggestions of something where you're like, this is really great, you should watch it, like, maybe. Krista got me to do it with The Punisher.
Although we know that didn't entirely work out in the end.
Well, that wasn't the fault of the show.
It was the fault of the show, wasn't it?
Oh, we just didn't cover season 2 because it went down the toilet.
So that's the fault of the show?
Yeah, but us taking so long to cover it was because of
that wasn't what I meant, but...
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. She watched season 2 and was like, it's terrible. First season's perfect, though. But, there's not a lot that I can be unspoiled on. Mm-hmm. So...
Probably a book.
Probably a book, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to see what happens and the way that people respond to this, because I apologize, everybody, since we just really didn't cover this in terms of the plot itself. But
what plot?
Right? Like, I really can't apologize because the plot feels intangible. It's like when you see something out of the corner of your eye and you turn and you can't see it anymore, but then you turn back and you can still see it. That's how I feel about it, where it seems like there's something there that I haven't caught, but as soon as I begin to try and examine it, it just vanishes. And I'm like, oh no, there wasn't anything there.
Just chasing shadows.
A little bit. I have this happen a lot at night when I take walks, and my night vision isn't great. So I can see things in the dark a lot better if I'm not looking directly at them.
That's weird.
So they'll be like, just like trash on the side of the road or somebody's cat or whatever. And when I turn to look, it's like harder to see than it was when I had my head turned. It's weird. It's spooky.
I would like you to stop taking walks at night if your night vision's not great and you have been bitten by dogs.
I would also like that, but I can't afford a treadmill. So here we are. If y'all want to buy me a treadmill, be my guest. I'm looking at the Treadler 2. It is around $750 and probably not worth it. So that's where I'm at.
Let's go walk in circles in your backyard.
And get chewed up by fire ants? Have you been to Texas, Jamie? It's a fucking jungle out here. If I'm not getting bitten by dogs, I'm getting bitten by fire ants. I'm getting bitten by meth heads, God knows. There's a couple at the end of my street that really just are not doing great. Or I get propositioned by guys who think I'm a sex worker.
Oh, it sounds like a lovely place to live.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. They haven't been super overt. It took me a while and talking to Rashawn to figure out exactly what was going on there. Because I was like, these dudes keep just like pulling over real slow and asking if I'm all right. Or not saying anything and just kind of like popping the door. And Rashawn was like,
God.
Yeah, they're cruising and think that you're a working girl. And I was like, oh. But there's been a cop car around the neighborhood for like a few weeks in a row around the park that this tended to happen by. And it hasn't been going on since then. So I think that there was a lady of the night that was working that park and the cops scared her away and her clientele has moved on to a different place. I do find it amusing, though, that apparently her clientele did not know what she looked like. Because,
Maybe she looked just like you.
Maybe she looked just like me. That's it. And she always wore workout clothes.
I mean...
It doesn't seem like a good idea. Wear a skirt. Easy access. Boom. Done. Why would you be in shorts or leggings? Like, getting leggings on and off is a nightmare. That's not good for sex work. God. Ugh. It's like getting a sports bra on and off when it's wet.
Ugh. Getting it on just in general.
Yeah. That's why I only wear ones that have like the hooks and eyes up the front, like the NL. Because otherwise, if it can fit around me enough to hold these girls up, it's going to be too tight to fit over my head. That's how that works out. Anyway, so we're a little off topic now. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap?
No, I'm just I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say about whether or not we should go on, and I will, in the meantime, start working on the next season and see how I feel about it. Okay.
Everybody, you know where to find us. Facebook.com/unspoiled Unspoiled Pod, Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast. If you want to become a patron and get access to other shows, which I promise I enjoy more usually and am not as mean about, you can go to patreon.com/unspoiled. Miles and I have just recorded on the first couple of chapters of Well of Ascension, which is the second Mistborn book. It took me a minute to remember the name. So, yeah, we just finished Midnight Sun before I went on vacation. And we're getting back into the world of Mistborn. We're going to do the whole Mistborn series, which I think is 6 books or 7. And then after that, we will be doing the Sookie Stackhouse series, which I'm super excited about.
You and Miles are?
Yeah. I'm because he had to go through all of Twilight and subject himself to the weird lore of that series, which is inconsistent and not thought out. And I'm going to try and reward him by bringing him into a vampire world with much better lore and a much more compelling main character. So
I read 2.5 of those books before I was like, nah.
Well,
not
you're
for
wrong.
Me.
I don't know what to tell you. It's fine.
I think I expected them to be something different than they were, and it just wasn't for me. I know Krista loves them, so she's probably going to be very excited that you're going to cover those.
Yeah, I read all of them. I think there's 16. I read
Ridiculous.
all of them in about a week and a half.
Yeah, they're not long.
No. And the audiobooks are pretty fun. And yeah, they're just a good time. And the main character, while possessing a number of like personality traits that I can't relate to, is intelligent and like is good with boundaries in a way that you don't often find from especially vampire novels, because there's just like this thing that's about having bad boundaries for some reason.
Yeah.
And the lore is really fun and interesting, and the world is very different. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping he does too. I think he will, but that's far in the future. We still have Mistborn. And Rashawn and I are still doing Dresden Files, and we are covering Song of Ice and Fire again, even though she saw the show. And there's a couple of like really key plot points that she has apparently completely forgotten that I am choosing not to remind her of at all, because it's funny.
Is it that Ned gets his head lopped off?
That's what it is. She forgot that Ned dies. It's weird. I thought that would at least have made an impression, but no. But yeah, there's some stuff that was like in the notes this time around that I almost read, and then I was like, oh no, but that'll give her a hint as to the fact that so-and-so was the one who did so-and-so, and she's apparently forgotten. So yeah, that's really funny. I really thought like, oh, well, she's spoiled and she'll remember everything. I forget how bad her memory is. So it's going to be a surprise all over again for her. It doesn't, I keep thinking that as we go, it's going to jog her memory and she'll suddenly like recall. And I don't think that's going to happen, actually. So I guess we'll see.
That's fun.
But yeah, it's been a good time. So if you want other stuff, Song of Ice and Fire. And I think that's everything.
Krista and I are covering the Vampire Diaries. And while season 4 isn't as exciting so far, we're about to get to the point where it gets a little more exciting. So I'm eagerly awaiting to see how she reacts to certain things that happen. It just feels like it's been treading water for a bit, and now I know we're getting close to where the action really picks up. So we'll get back into not tearing apart the plot holes that have been rampant
Gaping
in this season. Yeah. And we'll get to where things are like, oh my God, this show, like every episode, it's a new crazy thing that happens. So that's fun.
Yeah, I understand what you mean too, because I know that I'll go through that with certain things where I'm just like, I told you to read this or I told you to watch this, and it's tough right now, but I swear it's not that much longer. Stick with it. It's going to get crazy.
Well, that's how I felt with some of, Doctor Who, especially season 3, where you were really not enjoying yourself, where I was like, just hang on.
Poor Martha.
And now that's why I'm like, well, yeah, it might be time to throw in the towel. Well, to be determined.
TBD, everybody.
Yeah.
You're waiting with breath that is bated, I'm sure. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again so much for listening and for your feedback. And we will see you again next week with a new episode, I think. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.